This is the fictional story of Mark Harley and how the richest man in the world created the largest hostile workforce and a national security crisis for the complete dismantling and takedown of a sovereign nation. Now, you may be thinking, Sheridine, this sounds a bit dramatic, even for a story about a billionaire. And to that I say, buckle up, Buttercup, because this is about to get wild. We're talking about a level of audacious manipulation that makes your average billionaire's tax avoidance schemes look like a child's lemonade stand. This is a story about power, the illusion of choice, and how one man gamed the system to quite literally take over the world. Mark Harley wasn't born into politics. No, he bulldozed his way in, fueled by more money than God and a smile that could sell ice to penguins. You see, Harley had this uncanny ability to position himself as the solution to problems he created. He'd pour billions into think tanks and media outlets, whispering anxieties about the economy, about security, about the very fabric of society unraveling. And then, just as the world started looking a little too close to one of those disaster movies starring a surprisingly ripped geologist, Harley would emerge like a perfectly coiffed phoenix from the ashes of our collective anxieties. "Don't worry," his carefully crafted persona seemed to say. "Daddy's home now." He promised stability, prosperity, and a return to some vaguely defined glory days. People ate it up. They plastered his face on billboards and coffee mugs, convinced he was the messiah of common sense in a world gone mad. They didn't realize the madness was, well, manufactured. Harley's election wasn't a victory. It was a hostile takeover, a leveraged buyout of democracy itself. And the worst part, nobody saw it coming because they were too busy cheering for the guy who promised to drain the swamp while building himself a gilded alligator farm right in the middle of it. Winning the election was just the first act. Now Harley needed to solidify his grip on power. He did this by becoming the ultimate puppet master, pulling the strings of government from behind the scenes. He handpicked officials, not based on their qualifications, mind you, but on their malleability. These were yes men and women, more than happy to rubber stamp Harley's agenda in exchange for a taste of that sweet, sweet billionaire juice. And what was his agenda? Oh, just a little light chaos. Harley realized early on that fear was a fantastic motivator. So he engineered crises, subtly of course, like a Michelin star chef preparing a dish of societal unrest. He'd whisper in one ear about the need for tighter immigration policies, then in another about the dangers of unchecked government surveillance. The result? A beautifully orchestrated symphony of paranoia and division, with Harley conducting the whole damn thing from his ivory tower. And guess who swooped in with the solutions? That's right, the same guy who'd fanned the flames in the first place. It was a brilliant, albeit morally bankrupt, display of problem-reaction-solution, with Harley raking in the profits, both financial and political, every step of the way. Harley was a master manipulator, a virtuoso of the human psyche. He knew exactly which buttons to push to get the reaction he wanted, and boy did he push them. He'd done his metaphorical overalls and a folksy accent, railing against the elites and the swamp, conveniently forgetting to mention he was basically the Swamp Thing's sugar daddy. He tapped into the very real frustrations of people who felt ignored, unheard, and left behind by the system, but instead of offering real solutions, he offered scapegoats. Immigrants, minorities, anyone who looked different or thought differently became the enemy, the reason for all their problems. He painted himself as the champion of the common man, the only one who understood their struggles, while simultaneously sipping champagne with the very people he was demonizing. It was a level of hypocrisy so blatant it would make a Roman emperor blush, and the worst part, it worked. People fell for it, hook, line and sinker. They cheered him on as he dismantled the very institutions designed to protect them, blinded by their anger and their misplaced faith in a man who wouldn't know a real problem if it bit him on his perfectly tailored suit. Chapter 4, $8 million a day. Now, you might be wondering, how did Harley benefit from all this chaos? I mean, besides the obvious power trip and the satisfaction of watching the world burn while he sipped his morning mimosa. Well, let's just say, for Harley, chaos was very, very profitable. While the rest of us were busy panicking about the latest manufactured crisis, Harley was quietly raking in the dough. His companies, strategically positioned to benefit from instability, saw their profits soar. Every protest, every market fluctuation, every tweet storm of outrage added another zero to Harley's already obscene fortune. It's estimated that at the height of his influence, Harley was making roughly $8 million a day. That's right, while people were losing their jobs, their homes, their minds, Mark Harley was getting richer by the minute. And the more money he made, the more power he amassed, creating a vicious cycle of greed and manipulation that threatened to consume everything in its path. Chapter 5. The Hostile Takeover. Harley's tactics weren't exactly subtle. He believed in overwhelming force, a blitzkrieg of misinformation and intimidation designed to crush any opposition before it could even find its footing. He weaponized social media, unleashing armies of bots and trolls to spread his propaganda and harass anyone who dared to question his motives. He sued journalists, academics, even random people on Twitter who dared to criticize him, burying them in legal fees and silencing their dissent. He turned the very concept of truth into a battlefield, flooding the information ecosystem with so much noise and misinformation that it became impossible to tell fact from fiction. It was a masterclass in 21st century authoritarianism, a playbook for how to dismantle a democracy from the inside out without firing a single shot. Chapter 6, Above the Law. For Harley, laws were like those terms and conditions we all ignore, mildly inconvenient suggestions easily dismissed with a click of the I agree button. He operated with a sense of impunity, a belief that the rules simply didn't apply to someone of his stature. He used his wealth and influence to evade taxes, silence critics, and crush any attempts at regulation or oversight. When investigations were launched, they mysteriously stalled. When whistleblowers came forward, they were discredited, silenced, or simply disappeared. It was as if Harley existed in a parallel universe, one where accountability was a foreign concept and justice was just another commodity to be bought and sold. Chapter 7. The Bully Pulpit. Eventually, even Harley realized that having his name directly attached to every shady dealing was bad for the brand. So he did what any self-respecting billionaire villain would do. He retreated behind the scenes, becoming the puppet master extraordinaire. He installed loyalists in key positions of power, people who owed their careers, if not their souls, to him. These were his attack dogs, his mouthpieces, who would do his bidding without question or hesitation. And bid he did. From his shadowy perch, Harley continued to manipulate markets, influence elections, and shape the global narrative to suit his own agenda. Harley's ambition knew no bounds. He wasn't content with merely controlling the economy or the media. He wanted to control everything. He set his sights on the very institutions tasked with protecting the nation, seeing them not as safeguards of democracy, but as obstacles to his ultimate goal: total domination. He used his wealth to infiltrate intelligence agencies, install loyalists in key positions, and gain access to highly classified information. He sowed discord within the ranks, turning allies against each other and eroding trust in these vital institutions. He understood that a nation divided against itself is easy prey, and he worked tirelessly to exploit those divisions, widening the cracks in the foundation of society until it threatened to crumble entirely. Control, for someone like Mark Harley, wasn't just about power. It was about eliminating any possibility of dissent, any whisper of opposition that might threaten his carefully constructed house of cards. And what better way to control the narrative than to control the very means of communication itself? Harley embarked on a buying spree, snapping up media outlets like a kid in a candy store with an unlimited budget. Newspapers, television stations, websites. If it had an audience, Harley wanted it. He didn't even bother changing the names, just the tune. One day a news organization might be doing hard-hitting investigative journalism. The next singing Harley's praises, their integrity swallowed whole by a mountain of cash. While the world was busy arguing over his latest manufactured controversy or meme, Harley was playing a much longer game, one that involved nothing less than global domination. He understood that true power lay not just in controlling armies or economies, but in controlling the very infrastructure of civilization itself. He quietly acquired strategic assets, satellite networks, shipping lanes, energy grids. He poured billions into cutting-edge technology, developing surveillance systems so sophisticated they could track a butterfly's heartbeat from space. He built a web of influence that spanned the globe, a network of loyalists and assets, all working towards his ultimate goal. A world where Mark Harley wasn't just a billionaire, but an emperor, a god-king ruling over a digital feudalism of his own design. And the scariest part, he almost got away with it. Now, I know what you're thinking. Sheridine, this is bleak. This is some real handbasket meet hellfire kind of stuff. And you'd be right. This story, while fictional, serves as a cautionary tale. Because the line between satire and reality is about as thin as a Silicon Valley CEO's patience at a vegan cheese tasting. Mark Harley's empire, built on manipulation, fear, and a truly impressive disregard for human decency, eventually crumbled. Turns out, even in a world obsessed with memes and distracted by the constant digital circus, people eventually notice when their reality is being manipulated. The details of his downfall, well, that's a story for another time. But let's just say it involved a plucky group of journalists, a rogue AI chatbot with a penchant for truth-telling, and a very public meltdown involving a live-streamed therapy session and a very unfortunate incident with a toupee and a Roomba.